Well, hello, welcome back to my channel. Just Shauna here to talk about some friggin' books. I have 4 books that I read to talk about today, 2 DNFs, but of the 4 that I read, 3 of them are rereads, and 2 of them are part of a series, so I won't talk too much about the plot and all of that, so let's jump right into it. The first one is Timeless by Gail Carriger. It's over there, and I don't feel like getting it, so I'm gonna pop it up on the screen, even though that's annoying too. It's fine. This is the final book in the Parasol Protectorate series. It's a 5-book series, so this is the 5th one. It's adult, paranormal, urban fantasy, historical fantasy. It's a lot of things. And yeah, it's the last book, so I'm not gonna go into like a bunch of plot stuff, but I mean, as ever with this series, I just thoroughly enjoy Gail Carriger's authorial voice. Like, it is just my cup of tea. I love it so much. And I thought this was a solid ending to the series. It wasn't my favorite of the series. I think, honestly, like the first book and I think the second book probably were my favorites, if memory serves me. I'll have to go back and actually see like what I rated them. And yeah, there was some emotional parts here, some exciting parts. There was a twist at the end that I had forgotten about. And when it happened, I was like, oh, fuck. But then I remembered like what happened after, so I settled down for a minute. But yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed my reread of this. And if you're ever rereading these, or reading these if you like audiobooks, I guess. I just don't like audiobooks really for the first time I'm reading something. But if you do, have at it. The audiobooks, I think, are really good for this series, so check those out. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 7.7, which translates to 4.5 Pushinicorns. And the next book was a DNF, and I took it back to the library already. But that was A Blade of Black Steel by Alex Marshall. This was book 2 of a series, a trilogy, I believe. The first book being A Crown for Cold Silver, which, okay, I read A Crown for Cold Silver, and I was struggling with it at the beginning. I was like, I can't remember how far into it I was, but I was just really struggling to get invested in it. And then Ashley sent me the audiobook, and I listened to the audiobook, and I quite enjoyed it. And I still, by the end of it, I didn't feel super invested in the characters, but I chalked that up maybe to the audiobook. Like I said, I don't love listening to audiobooks the first time I read a book, especially fantasy. And high fantasy, it's difficult for me to get into the story. So I was like, maybe it was that. So I'm gonna pick up the next book in the physical form and read that. But I had the same issue again where I just was struggling, and I don't know really how to describe it. It's just, I think Alex Marshall's writing style just really doesn't work for me. I would pick up the book, and it's like I felt my brain getting jumbled every time. It's not that there was anything particularly confusing happening. There's a lot of characters, but I read a lot of books with a lot of characters, so that it wasn't that. I didn't have the characters confused or anything. I knew who everybody was. I don't know if it's his sentence structure or just what it is about his writing style that just feels like a lot in my brain, and I would just be like, I don't. It's very weird, and I just was like, I'm not gonna push through. Like, it was a thick ass book. And I was like, I just think that this is an author that is not for me, so I'm not gonna read it. And then I read book 11 of Sookie. God, I'm on book 12 now, guys, and there's one left after that. I will be done. There's the short story ones, but yeah, this is book 11. I don't even know how to summarize the plot of this book because it was a fucking mess. It was just a hot ass mess. Characters completely not acting like themselves, like acting completely different than they normally do. Pam in particular, I was like, who the fuck is this? This is not Pam. This is not the Pam I know and love. Other than, of course, Sookie being hypocritical and judgmental as fuck and annoying. That was there. This book just felt like the epitome of milking it for all it's worth. Like, just filler. Also, there were multiple glaring plot holes, like, where I was like, is this really, I had to miss something, right? And I'd go back and reread and be like, nope, that's just a gaping plot hole. This one thing in particular, Sookie finds this magical object and doesn't know what it is. She just knows it's like a special fancy magical object. And she's like asking her friend Amelia, who's a witch, like, can you look into this? Because I have, like, no idea. Oh my God, maybe somebody else will know. Maybe Sam can look in this magical creatures library he knows about to, like, find it. Like, she has no clue what this thing is or what it does, right? And then, like, in the next chapter, I think it was, she says, oh, so-and-so will be really excited to get this thing because it does XYZ. And I was like, I thought she didn't know what it did. Did I completely black out while I was reading? Like, she didn't find out what it does, right? And I went back and reread from the point where she, like, found it. And yet, no, she never fucking learned what it did, but all of a sudden she just knows what it does. And then, like, 2 chapters later, she's talking about how she doesn't know what it fucking does again. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? Like, so ridiculous. And then Jason, her brother, has a girlfriend. He's had a girlfriend for like 3 books now. And she likes the girlfriend and she talks about the girlfriend all the damn time. She saw Jason and the girlfriend driving together earlier in this book, I think. And then later on, someone asks her about Jason and is like, oh, is he single? And Sookie goes, yep, still single. And I was like, girl, what? No, he isn't. Like, he's very much not. He has a live-in girlfriend. What the fuck are you talking about? And I was just like, Mrs. Harris, what is happening? It just felt so thrown together. And this one, I think this is the lowest rating so far for a Sookie book, which it's just going further downhill. I'm very curious what this book 12 is going to be in book 13. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 4, which translates to 2 Pushinicorns. Yeah, I don't fucking know. I'm legit going to have so much fun. I can't wait to finish the series just to roast Sookie. Like, I can't wait. You guys don't even understand. And then the final book for my seasonal TBR from May to August was the reread of Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And this was a fun time. I had only read, I think I've read this book just once before. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was fun. It's like so a young adult like romance, you know? Like in its day, I feel like this would have been categorized in booktube terms or in current publishing terms as like a YA contemporary romance. That's totally what it is. Fucking Lydia, one of the sisters, Lydia Bennet, is truly one of the worst characters ever. Like, she is an utter piece of garbage. I fucking hate her. At first she was just kind of like there and like kind of obnoxious and like the little sister being like, I'm gonna flirt with soldiers. But then by the end of it I was like, this fucking bitch. Like, are you kidding me? And Lizzie, Elizabeth Bennet, she was really dumb at first. Like, so very dumb. The minute that fucking Wickham started being like, I just met you, but blah, 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 Darcy's a piece of shit, and like spilling the tea on Mr. Darcy, immediately, I like red flags, like, bro. And I wish I had like taken better notes the first time I read it because I was much younger then, and I wonder if I had a different perspective. But now, being 34 years old, reading it, I was like, girl, that's shady. He just fucking, and later in the book, she realizes like, oh, maybe that was kind of weird that he just like started telling me his life story and talking all this shit about somebody that, like, I just met you, bro. And yeah, that was my immediate thought, was like, that's really shady. And so it was kind of annoying at first that, like, she was just all like, oh my gosh, Darcy sounds terrible. And I'm like, yeah. And I mean, it's called Pride and Prejudice. Like, that's the whole fucking point, is that she had this prejudice about him, and then they both had pride, and, you know, all the things. But yeah, it's Pride and Prejudice. Like, I love it. I'll always love it. It's a fun time. And fucking their dad, Mr. Bennet, is hilarious. The very first page, when Mrs. Bennet like wants to tell him something, she's like, have you heard something? Blah. And he just is like ignoring her. And then she goes, do you not want to know who has taken it? Cried his wife impatiently, talking about this house. And he goes, you want to tell me, and I have no objection to hearing it. And then, this was invitation enough. And then she starts like spewing her shit. And then the mom she fucking kills me too. When Elizabeth is like, oh, we're gonna meet this guy, and Mrs. Long promised to introduce him. I do not believe Mrs. Long will do any such thing. She has 2 nieces of her own. She is a selfish, hypocritical woman, and I have no opinion of her. But you do though, because he just called her selfish and hypocritical. Like, it just cracks me the fuck up. And it's like meant to be like look how ridiculous she is and they are. And it's, oh God, it's just so fucking funny to me. On my 1 to 10, I gave this an 8.14, which translates to 4.5 Pushinicorns. There were parts that kind of dragged a little bit for me, so that's kind of why I knocked it down just a bit. Next up, I read The Cyborg Tinkerer by LaTorre, and this was an arc given to me in exchange for an honest review. Completely irrelevant to the contents of the book, but I mean, we all love a good cover. I think this is a great cover. Like, it's just so much fun. This is sci-fi, in case you couldn't pick up on that from the cover. Sci-fi, steampunk, adventure, I guess I would say. If you enjoy a fast-paced adventure, and if you like sci-fi, of course, and steampunk, then I think you will really, really enjoy this. There were parts of it that didn't exactly work for me, where I wanted to see a little bit more of like the plot development and some character development. It was just like moving at a pretty quick pace. And like I said, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. It just didn't always work for me personally. There were just times where I was left a bit wanting with certain things that were playing out in the story. There is some diverse representation here, people of color, and this isn't a world where that is a thing. So, you know, that's cool. There's just people of color, and they're people, and there you go. They're not marginalized or oppressed for being people of color. And also some sexuality diversity, which was cool. Some polyamory in here. There was other LGBT rep, I think, also. There is some sexy times also. Right at the start, kind of, we get a little smutty action. It's not like intense and frequent, but there are a few smutty, sexy times. Mostly at the end, but yeah, there is like a brief one at the beginning and then at the end, and then like in the middle there's a lot of sexual tension between our characters. But yeah, like I said, some of the things just didn't work for me personally. I didn't get super invested in the characters, I think because of that, like wanting a little bit more explanation for, well, how did we get here? Like, we just, a few times where it felt like characters just, oh, I have a sudden realization, and I like a little bit more like build up to that, I guess. On my 1 to 10, I gave this a 5.57, which translates to 3 Pushinicorns. And the last book I'm going to talk about today is the other DNF, and that is Foundryside by this guy, Robert Jackson Bennett. So this book, I think it's adult. I think it's categorized as adult. It didn't feel like it to me. I'm not even gonna lie, the dialogue was the biggest thing for me. And you know, you have those certain things in books that like are make or break for you. And then you have things where you're like, it's maybe not my favorite thing, but I can kind of work through it if, you know, whatever, if I'm otherwise having a good time reading. But dialogue is one of those make or break things for me. If there's dialogue in a book that is like not good, in my opinion, that like doesn't work for me, it kills a book for me, especially when there's a lot of dialogue like there is in this book. I got to about page 105 or some shit like that, so a fair amount of the way in. Like I read about that much of it. It's like a 500-page book, so 1/5 of the way through it. And yeah, it's this fantasy world. It's like Renaissance era-esque, but that was one thing too. The world building I didn't think was super awesome. I don't really know what anything looked like necessarily. And then the magic system is a super cool concept. It's scriving, and you like put symbols on objects to basically like make them think they're doing something that they're not. And like that's the magic, all right? But the way things were described, the way the scriving was explained, felt really like a 9-year-old was talking to me and being like, well, you just like do this and then like it thinks it's doing this other thing and you trick it and voila. And like, I don't know, it felt so juvenile. And then that was my thing with the dialogue. Also, number one, kind of all the characters sounded the same to me. I couldn't really differentiate their voices. And it was just kind of, I feel like it's mean to say, but it felt kind of cringy and cheesy in parts and just very juvenile. I felt like it was like middle schoolers talking to each other. So yeah, by about page 45, I was feeling this way, but I was like, I'm gonna give it to like 100 pages in, and I did, and then I was like, yeah, no, I just can't. And I looked at some negative reviews once I decided to DNF, and they basically were saying that they had issues with the same things I did, and that for them it didn't get better throughout the book. So I felt better then about, not that I felt bad about DNFing, but you know what I mean. Like, I was like, okay, it was a good choice to DNF for me. I totally understand why people love this book when they do love it, but yeah, like I said, there's just certain things that if they don't work for you, it can kill a book, and dialogue being like this definitely killed it. So there we have it. As always, thank you so much for your time. Hope that you guys have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.